Convening locally, thinking globally has been our motto for the nearly 49 years of our existence, and we're so grateful you've chosen to convene with us tonight online. Please use the Q&A option at the bottom of your screen to submit questions. You can type those in there at any time, and we'll get to as many audience questions as time permits. I'd like to take just a moment to thank the organizations and individuals who've helped make tonight's program possible. Our sponsors include the Town of Vail, Vail Resorts Epic Promise, the Antlers at Vail, and the Vail Daily. Our virtual programs are sponsored by Alpine Bank. Jeannie and Dale Mosier have underwritten the winter season. Kathy and Neil Kimmel have underwritten the Hot Topics series. And the underwriters for tonight's program are George Nimmo and Sandy and Fred Pack. The Vail Symposium is also supported by a generous grant from the Frechette Family Foundation. Thank you to all of our donors. If you're not a donor, but you would like to ensure that the Vail Symposium is able to continue offering quality programming, please visit vailsymposium.org to donate. I'd also like to recommend that you join us again on Thursday, January 28th at 11 a.m. This is one of our rare morning programs where we turn our attention to Russian efforts to amplify disinformation and undermine democracy. We'll be joined by Peter Pomerantsev of Johns Hopkins University, and he's the reason why we're doing it at 11 a.m. He's based in London, and so the 7-hour time difference made it a little tough to do a program at 6 o'clock our regular time. And he's going to be joined by Svet Derderian from the University of Colorado. And some of you may remember Svet if you attended our program in 2019 on corrosive capital by Russia in like nascent democratic states. So again, that's Thursday, January 28th at 11 a.m. Tonight, we turn our attention to innovation and regulation. Tonight's distinguished guests include Patrick Reasonover. He's the lead producer on They Say It Can't Be Done. He previously produced the award-winning feature-length documentary Of Dogs and Men. He's the co-creator and producer on an animated comedy web series based on the New York Times best-selling book series, The Politically Incorrect Guides. Through his work with corporate partners, Patrick has produced more than 300 animated, documentary, virtual reality, and narrative projects. He holds a BA from Emory University in creative writing and philosophy. Also joining us is cinematographer Benjamin Gaskill. Benjamin's father was a jazz musician, his mother a painter. So Benjamin was raised to hold authentic expression and visual art as essential hallmarks of the human experience. His sense of clarity to become a lifelong cinematographer came to fruition in the summer of 2012 when his first feature-length film, Honor Flight, Stars and Stripes, premiered to a crowd of almost 30,000 people. He gained a clear sense of the things to come, and to date, Benjamin has worked on several feature-length and short-form narrative documentary films. He has worked with musicians such as David Crosby, as well as media outlets such as the Discovery Channel and Sony Entertainment. Victoria Resevka is an LA-based director-producer experienced in film development, production, and post on over 75 projects in production, including producing over 40 funded short films and 2 features. She's currently in pre-production for 3 films she will be directing and shooting in early 2021, in addition to completing her 4th episode of her art film series, A Study in Discovery. Victoria is fluent in Latvian and has traveled extensively, leading film teams in countries such as India, Ukraine, Bosnia, Serbia, and Greece. Welcome to all of our guests this evening. So first of all, I was hoping that I could get you all to discuss your roles on this film. And I think I'd like to start with Benjamin.
Yeah, and thanks for having us. It's an exciting opportunity. I was the director of photography on the film. And yeah, my main duties consist of, I guess what you could describe as sort of rendering the visual authorship of the film, you know, sitting with the producers and also the director, and just sort of talking through what we wanted to achieve throughout our shooting schedule at any given location, which for this film was quite a few.
Okay, and Victoria, can you tell us what you did? And I know that some of your roles overlap with Patrick, so if you guys want to do this together, that would be great as well.
Yeah, sure thing. Thank you so much. I was a producer on They Say It Can't Be Done, and producers, we like to say, are kind of, your job might entail anything and anything that can make the film that comes to creation. So Patrick was the lead producer on this film, and I'll let him speak to his own duties there. But we work very closely together in terms of like creating the content and what's going to be what Ben is going to be visually rendering on that on the screen. And so some of my duties might have been something like Patrick tells me about how the certain interviewees that we've obtained, and then I work with the director as well as Ben, as well as the rest of our crew, and alongside Patrick, to make sure we have the ability to get the best film, the best story, and the best visuals on that screen, which means understanding what our locations are, understanding how much time it takes to get something done, what type of gear needs to happen with that, things like that.
Yes. Well, thank you all for watching our film and for having us on. You know, it took us 2 years, you know, start to finish to make this. So when you think about, you know, you see us three here, but there were, you know, probably 15, 20, 25 people over the course of this working very hard to try to create something. And it's the greatest honor really for us is that you guys would take 2 hours of your time to watch something that we made. So thank you. Yeah, I think, you know, what does the lead producer do? I hire awesome people and hope for the best. I guess one of the key things I could mention is the generation of the concept and how we decided to go in this direction. So for us, you know, starting with a film about innovation and regulation, those are very conceptual. And so when it's a film, we want to have a story and we want to have characters and we want to create kind of the emotional, imaginative truth or discovery rather. And so for us, what we wanted to do is think, well, why does innovation and regulation matter? And so, you know, really these are tools to solve problems. So then we decided, let's look at the biggest problems, you know, for everyone globally. Then see who has solutions. And it was kind of crazy to think about, I don't know, is there a solution to global warming? And so it was fantastic to go and get to meet the people that you guys saw in the film. It's always wonderful to be around these people who are just, you know, really generating the future and hearing about that moment of imagination. So, you know, we structured the film so that we're looking at these problems in different sectors so that, you know, you, rather than, you know, kind of just telling you what we think about innovation and regulation, we really wanted to give you you know, begin kind of with a question. What are these things? How do they relate to me? Introduce you to some people who are doing some pretty amazing things, and then hopefully leave you with deeper questions about how to think about these ideas.
That's great. And that really leads into my next question, which is, how did you specifically select these 4 areas? You had 2 items or 2 segments around food, the laboratory grown meat and the aquaculture. You had the medicine component, and then you had the carbon capture. Why those 4 areas?
Well, I'll speak to that since, you know, I probably was more at the front end development process on this particular doc. So we wanted to start with problems that were epic, you know, because we like making things epic. And, you know, there doesn't get any more epic than atmospheric carbon and global warming and ocean acidification. So those were kind of the first ones we really zeroed in on. Then when it comes to health, that's really tricky. You know, what are the problems with health? And, you know, from a certain sense, I kind of really wish we could have gone a little bit deeper because I see that the real problem is rising healthcare costs. Mm-hmm. We were looking at, just from the standpoint of eliminating the organ wait lists when we started, But as we discovered what the technology could be, it almost could replace the drug industry in a way, and just really our whole approach to health could be different and more affordable across the board. So that's how we selected that one. And then with the food, we just thought it was so incredibly fascinating, this idea that you could be eating this chicken nugget while the chicken was still walking around. And that didn't have just like global warming as like one problem. You have high quality, low cost protein. You have, animal welfare, and then you also have pollution, and then land use. A third of all land is used to grow food for animals that we're going to eat. What is going to happen to that third of the land when we don't do things that way anymore? Kind of fascinating.
So we're going to come back to that laboratory grown meat aspect because it's pretty controversial. But I want to ask a question from our audience, Anne and Tom Rader. Ask specifically to Patrick, but I also want everyone to weigh in. And that's, what did you want this film to accomplish? And I'm sure that there was a team goal, but I'm also wondering if you all had individual goals as well. And maybe we start with Victoria.
Good question.
Yeah, that is really great. I think that especially the nature of the content is always to, at minimum, I think especially with these types of innovators, these entrepreneurs, the biggest thing I think, at least this is both personal and I think ideal for the film in a general sense, is that most of these things I felt like I didn't even know they existed. It sounds like a sci-fi story that someone just wrote. And then when we find out that this is not only someone's conception, or I hope we can do this in 50 years, this is happening right now. Actually, we made it. Actually, it works super well. And actually, it's ready to go to market. It's not, we're here. The future is right now. So I feel like at minimum, whether you like any of the ideas or not, it's that there is incredible innovation that is happening out there that is we're not aware of, and it's coming incredibly fast. And I just feel like at minimum, it's just like reading a rad sci-fi story. It's just like, this is awesome. I had no idea. So I feel like minimum is just being aware of that, the incredible things that people are doing.
For me as the cinematographer, I knew going into it that each of these concepts, there's a lot of technology with it. There's a lot of moving parts and nuts and bolts and things that to effectively convey in a way that is digestible takes having a strong point of view when you're standing in front of the thing. And I don't know. I mean, I guess it's part of the reason why I am a director of photography, a DP, is because, when you're faced with something that has so much passion, intelligence, intention behind it, it's personally inspiring to me, which, I don't want to sound grandiose in this way, but it really is like at times some of these moments in the documentary of just being there. We have the crew, we have all the resources, and the director and Victoria and Patrick are kind of, we're all brainstorming and what is the strongest point of view that we can take with this thing that has so many facets to explore visually. My goal within that was just to have it clear and concise, but also try to capture and sort of bear witness to like that ineffable, human element that was personally inspiring to me.
I like when you guys go first, then I get to think about my answer. So I would say two things, just jumping off what these guys said. One was, we want the innovation and the innovators and what they do to be seen like art, like they're craftsmen, they're almost like chefs. You maybe don't think about an engineer or research scientist as like a chef or an artist, but we sort of felt that is true, and so wanted that to come through in the visuals. And then with tagging on what Victoria said, these topics are controversial, and we live in a time of great division ideologically. And so in my bio, I listed I was a philosophy major. So for us, I suppose we want to kind of redirect focus away from who has the right answer to, the imagination. So not critical reason, but speculative reason and the imagination, thinking, well, if we're locked now, there must be a third thing or a third way that we're going to go that sort of heals the breach. And so I think we wanted to do something hopeful.
So Jess has a great question that I hadn't even thought about, but who funds a production like this? Where does the money come from? Because it seems like you had a large cast, you had several different places where you were filming. It probably cost a lot of money to put this documentary together.
Yes, and it was wonderful. We could have had more, but
You're scrappy.
Yeah, we're scrappy. I think, okay, so the history of the project is this nonprofit organization in DC, the Federalist Society, had a regulatory transparency project. And so they had an RFP. And so filmmaking teams from all around the country pitched their creative take. And then we won. And then it was just so fantastic because they basically said, we loved your take, and now here's all the money, go make something amazing. And that was that. And then we delivered it, and they said, amazing. And here we are.
So from when you started filming until now, can you give us a sense of that timeline?
100 years ago. Well, I guess we went through the RFP process and development. I would say that took about 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
Then when we kind of landed on our take, and then we, started actually moving forward, there was probably like 6 months to a year of production.
Pre-production, I feel like we had a good, I felt like it was somewhere around 4 months of that beginning part that was pre-pro, kind of like setting our base to get ready for push-off production. Documentaries tend to have a different feel from narrative, in the sense that once you push off from production, you need to have an extended lifespan, because it's like, gosh, what is that called? You need to have stamina. So kind of that was imperative for a while to get us going for our extensive amount of shoots that we had.
Yes, there's a lot of logistics that are involved that are also an art. So when you are on a budget and when you are doing a documentary, it's not like we can just have the budget to pick up and fly 15 people to some random location whenever we want. We really have to focus in pre-production on arranging all of the interviews in a way so that we can get them done, which so was about 6 months. And then we go into post-production, which is maybe another 4 to 5 months process. So it's a long time and a lot of people.
Yeah, I mean, I was focusing on the 4 areas of innovation, but you had a lot of people you interviewed from government, from think tanks. How did you find those people? Why that mix of people?
I think so. We wanted to get a lot of different perspectives, and then also our approach is more question oriented, not hey, let's set up a conclusion for the audience to just think like us. So when you do that, you have to think different. When we talked to Julie Friedman, also known as Woman with Hat, before we had chyrons in there, I remember she just said, in the first time I spoke to her, maybe the third sentence was, do you think about time linearly or non-linearly? No, like, I don't know. So we wanted a good mix of people who are just bringing different consciousnesses to the subject for the audience. So maybe just Victoria, could you weigh in on any of the ones that you thought like were your favorites?
Well, yeah, Julie was definitely super interesting. Felt like we traveled through space and time during that interview. But I think a few of them that I especially liked. I remember one day we shot. One was Patrick Allett, who is philosopher, historian. There we go. And it had him juxtaposed to one of our more government type officials, and it was great to have him hearing it in the same day. Obviously, in the film, you have it laid out throughout, but having the historical, the basis, the broad general view, and then someone who has a perspective. His perspective is maybe we got to go through time. We got to make these decisions. I can't have people. I can't just let anyone do everything. They might die. What if we have all these problems? So you get that perspective comparatively to how people have moved through time. And then the following day, we have someone else who comes in and says, well, I'm an innovator. And, I have an opposing position to that. So I feel like all of the interviews when we're moving throughout them, especially when you're shooting them, feels like you're getting all of that information at once. And I feel like it was more the feeling throughout. Like we had a lot of interviews, but there was especially 2 days there where I felt like we got all the perspectives and the base laid out for us.
And then we're on a boat.
So I warned you we were going to circle back to the lab-grown meat. And just full disclosure, we did a program in 2019. We called it The Future of Food. And we had laboratory-grown meat companies or laboratory-grown protein companies because we had finless foods and we had new age meats represented at that program. And I noticed that you guys used Just Foods for your program, and they're best known, I guess, for their egg product, which is available in the United States. But your program focused on their chicken product, which I understand is now available in Singapore or is soon to be available in Singapore. So I guess my question is, have you kind of followed up, or have you been watching your babies from your documentary to see how they're doing?
I like the framing that they're our babies, because then it's almost like whatever they do, we did it. We have followed up, and I can give you guys some information if you have specific questions about where everyone is. I wouldn't say it's a happy story. From my standpoint, the fact that Just Food, a guy raised in Birmingham, Alabama, who then develops a company and brings people all over the world to San Francisco together to work on this, has to go to Singapore to produce his product. I mean, I told Josh, congratulations, that's awesome. But to me, it's pretty frustrating. I mean, because we ate the chicken. It's great.
That was actually my follow-on question is, have you tried it and will you be a consumer of laboratory grown protein?
Yeah, I mean, 100%. It really, after getting a chance to sort of climb into the machine, see the way it's made from top to bottom in all steps. Yeah, no doubt. I was very much convinced that it's like healthier, safer, much more sustainable. And then also purely divorced from those facts, just a simple act of tasting it was like, yeah, this is really good. It's delicious. What about you guys?
Yes. Well, tasting it was great. It was awesome when we were there. Obviously, you guys got to see those amazing chefs cook it. I remember for a minute there, we thought we would get me on camera tasting this chicken. And what's kind of funny about it is that we ended up not using it just because I couldn't actually figure it out. I'm tasting this chicken, and it's so incredibly, the taste is identical, and in a lot of ways, way more full and way more chicken flavor. And so obviously just me, a random girl trying to figure this out, wouldn't have rendered well for the film, but it was awesome getting to experience those, and I would definitely be a consumer. At minimum, I think it's important to think about how great it is to have the option and the ability in case.
You blew the punchline. She couldn't tell the difference. She guessed the wrong one. They're like, which one's the lab-grown chicken and which one's the real chicken? And she guessed the wrong one because they taste exactly the same.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, so I had an interesting conversation with someone yesterday over lunch, and I was mentioning this very thing. I was talking about our program tonight, and she said to me, well, if I ate this chicken or if I bought this chicken, would it put chicken farmers out of business? And I said, yeah, probably. She goes, oh, then I don't want to do it. And I actually think it's probably beside the point, because my understanding is companies like Purdue and Tyson are actually big investors in laboratory grown meat. But somebody else, one of our audience members, has asked a question somewhat related to this. They're from Wyoming. And, the whole ranching way of life is important to people's culture. And so what they're wondering, are there a way for these innovators to include these more traditional folks as opposed to just putting them out of business?
Yeah, well, I can say, Josh and the folks at Just are not trying to put anybody out of business. I think they're trying to offer a new product and compete on the free market. And so they did, and we did ask that question. Josh didn't really think that, animals grown for slaughter would ever go away. I guess I think of it like this. People all over the world spend an incredible amount of their time working just to live. And often they're doing things that maybe they don't want to do. That if there was born in another life where they just had protein, they would have made different decisions about what they were putting their creative talents towards. And so no one is prevented from being a cattle rancher. But there may be people who are working in chicken plants in Arkansas who would rather be filmmakers, And so I sort of just feel it as there's so much opportunity for people when they're able to, have education and then be creative. That when we have innovations that unlock these things, what we're really doing is unlocking people to then make more choices with their life to do things they want to create, like the next new thing. And so I sort of look at it as freeing. And yes, so Just said, we love the fact that we're partnered with Tyson, because though we have a product, we do not have an international distribution chain. And so there's that. The other thing, their innovation, which we talk about in the film, is early on, they're using this bovine beetle serum to grow the meat. So the Udi, Indiana Jones, who works there, went all over the world and is harvesting all of these different types of seeds and plants. So they've now made a vegetable amniotic fluid that the meat would grow in. So the next step, obviously, would be we need a bunch of agriculturalists and farmers to grow the specific crops that are needed to make this thing. So I think, that's just how, I think about, these innovations in economic growth.
I also feel like the majority of every single place that we went and visited, it always felt like it was filling a niche, in a symbiotic way. That there is a problem that actually without this, say a farmer or another group is having trouble figuring out, let's say, malnutrition areas where someone might not have enough money to purchase real meat. Well, maybe this is an option. I can feed my family for a while we're getting on our feet. Can pay this cheaper meat. We have better nutrition. Ideally, I'm going to buy that awesome Texas steak, but I had this ability to have a choice rather than not have a choice and not be able to eat any meat at all because I can't afford it. So it felt like all of it felt symbiotic rather than pushing out one or the other.
So shifting gears just a little bit to talk about, let's say, regulation more broadly. And I think there's a lot of finger pointing in different directions. And it's always thrilling when you're watching a movie and you see somebody you know. It almost never happens. But Clark Neely actually spoke here with us almost exactly a year ago. It feels like a decade, but it was a year ago that he was speaking on criminal justice reform, actually. And so it was interesting to watch him talk in your documentary about how much big business actually loves regulation because it creates barriers to entry and kind of protects them. But we had someone write in a question, John Gaither, and he seems to question whether or not Congress and the federal bureaucracy is to blame for, fear to act, a culture that doesn't want to be blamed when something goes wrong. So what is it? Is it government? Is it big business? Is it both?
Yeah, so I think the way we approach that is it's not binary, you know? So, I mean, if we could have made the film where I found Mr. Bad Guy who worked at the regulation place, and then he picked up the phone and he's like, I hear there's an entrepreneur doing something somewhere, go stop him, you know, then we would have filmed that because it would have been a lot easier. Yeah. But instead, just as we did the research, we found that wasn't really the case. I mean, maybe it is the case in some context, but what we just found is that it's just a complex story. You know, it's a much more complex story. Certainly, I think the questioner is 100% right. I mean, these regulatory bodies are set up to be risk averse. If they're incentivized to be risk averse, and so that simple principle sort of warps the whole thing. You know, there's then often a sentiment of regulator versus industry. You know, but actually, regulator and industry, just like regulation and innovation, have to collaborate. They're really partners on a team. And so it's unfortunate when they don't see themselves that way and they don't like respect the boundaries. And then the regulators are trying to step in and way over regulate and protect people. You don't get anything if you don't risk anything. You know, you just get stasis. And with stasis, you get decline. And so for us, you know, we really looked at that, the risk aversion and the incentives for that, and then the risk to create. And if there's something out of alignment there, then we have a problem that needs to be addressed.
So shifting gears to this, the segment on carbon capture. Am I missing something? Because it seemed to me that was a section that's actually begging for regulation, that it's not happening because there's no regulation requiring it.
Yeah, so we made a decision early on to think about regulation in a very open sense. You know, we want to think about it in a conceptual sense, in the widest possible sense. We also want to think about it in a feeling sense, right? Like, so I'm an entrepreneur. What does regulation mean to me? I was doing one of these panels at a law school, and I was just quoted the conceptual definition for what regulation is. And I'm like, well, actually, though, when you talk to an entrepreneur or you are one, what regulation is fear. At any time, I could be doing something wrong that I don't know. And all of these people who work for me that I've gathered to do this cool thing that I want to do for other people who are going to consume it could suddenly just be destroyed because I'll make a mistake that I don't even know what is, you know? And, you know, so like a conceptual definition doesn't capture that. So for us, we chose to see regulation almost as a form of order. And so property rights is a kind of regulation. And so, you know, when the sky is an unowned public good, nominally, then we can have a tragedy of the commons where people don't get it. If there's a way to divide it and make it owned, so then we can have the benefit of people then, you know, treating it with, you know, it's their thing, so then they manage it over the time, and it's better, then we do that. So we have a lot of division. People not favoring a carbon tax as a form of regulation. Some people saying, you know, atmospheric carbon is good. We didn't want to take a position on that in the film because we knew we would immediately alienate half of whoever there was. And so instead, what we wanted to say is, some people don't think this is a problem, some people do. If you happen to think that there is a problem, you might be very interested in this cool technology where if we could set up a market where there can be right, I have a right to pull it out of the ground, but if I have this right, I have a permit, I then have to pay for it to go back in the ground. I can pay someone else, or someone else can buy my right to get it put back in the ground because they have a thing that sucks it out of the air. And then we have a market that would decrease atmospheric carbon and solve the problem. So it's a form of regulation, but it's often not the form that we hear argued.
Well, somebody just sent me a text. I'm not sure who, but thank you, whoever it was, that Elon Musk, I think Chris did, Elon Musk pledges 100 million for carbon capture technology.
Great.
But I couldn't help but wonder as I was watching that segment, how come we can't just plant more trees? And Tom and Marcia, and our audience is asking, what about nonprofits that are planting trees with drone technology, for instance? Couldn't that be part of a carbon capture plan as opposed to, or perhaps in addition to carbon capture, let's say machinery?
Do you guys want to take that?
I think once again that's in the same symbiotic space that I would say ultimately yes. I think that on all fronts people should be innovating and coming up with solutions. This group is going to do it this way with maybe cool machines. This group has their cool seeds that they're going to plant in the ground and plant real trees. I think that it's once again not binary. I think all fronts are good in this sense that we should be seeing what works here. Maybe in one area it's better to have this type of group work here rather than this one, and this one's better in more of an industrial area. So I would say that's like wonderful, and I think that once again they both fill niches that can help bandage up possibly different areas that we need to get covered in this space.
Yeah, if you want to go to sci-fi land, we'll go first. So we would say, oh, well, there was the horse. Patrick Allen gives us a great analogy about how in the early part of the century when everyone operated horse, they were like, oh my God, what are we going to do about all this horse poop?
Oh yeah.
They started doing math. Well, once we're at 10 million people in New York City, there will be nothing to do, but we will all be breathing horse poop. It'll be here. We need a bunch of regulations to stop this. And then, of course, the solution was not regulation, but the internal combustion engine. And then, naturally, that has its own form of poop. And then, so the question is like, well, what are we going to do about that? And we could try to have arguments about it. Or we could look for another internal combustion engine type solution. And then we have that. And so I think, that's how we look at that. And the idea that there could be markets where people are able to compete. And one thing I should mention is we didn't pick these 4 companies as though these are the guys who are going to do everything. They're the best. There are many people working in all of these areas on these problems. And so what we were really trying to find are people who were representative, because who they all experience these problems in common.
Mm-hmm.
Just a quick commercial break. We understand that your film has been picked up for distribution. Could you tell us a little bit about that? I guess it's going to be available beginning in March.
Yes, we were very fortunate to get distribution with Gravitas, one of the largest independent film distributors. And the film should be available to the public for rent or buy in late March. I think it's March 23rd. And then after that, it will go into what you call the subscription VOD window. And so it would be available on Amazon, Netflix, Hulu, those kinds of places.
Well, that's great. Congratulations. I thought we were done with the laboratory grown meat section, but we're not. We're going back there because Mary Alice wants to know about the nutritional value. I mean, this is something grown in this serum, this solution. How could that be equivalent to something that's grown in an organic bean?
You want to take it?
Yeah, I'm just thinking right now.
You're thinking? I can talk while you think.
Yeah, you sure can.
Well, because you guys addressed the taste issue. And even in the documentary, they talk about how it actually tastes more like chicken than chicken. But I'm just wondering if it can mimic the natural environment.
Well, to our understanding, and I think based on all of the stuff that Just Foods has said and all of these other lab-grown meats, it has the exact same nutritional value, and because it is the exact same product organically. It is literally chicken meat, so it's not made in an adjustment in terms of that sense. I think, but also the only reason I had to think for a second is it's super interesting being a filmmaker and getting to, you fall so deeply into your stories, no matter what they are. And as you follow these groups around, and in a lot of ways, like Patrick said, oh, if there are kids, it's almost like we did it. But then you remember you didn't. And then you realize, well, in some ways, I know that that's the nutritional facts, but I always would want to go back and like make sure they're the experts on this. Like we know a lot. We were so lucky to get to be out there as filmmakers, bearing witness and finding the story and interesting things like that. But always, I always like to preface that we aren't the actual experts. I don't actually make the lab grown meat, but that. I just
I guess I would add, so my mom grew up on a farm. I'm from Alabama, and she would describe having the milk from the cow tasted with like whatever the cow decided to eat. And sometimes that was good, and sometimes it was maybe not as good. So if you might imagine with the nutritional value, rather than have the chicken peck around on the ground and eat whatever is there, you can almost sort of find the best chicken that has had the best life and the best minerals and nutrients.
Which is what they do.
Which is what they do. And then you put that into the fluid. So it's actually better than random chicken.
Yeah, Ian the chicken, it was Ian. Yeah. He's objectively like very perfect chicken.
He's very perfect.
Yeah.
So I want to move on to talk about your aquaculture segment. And I actually went online and checked with the guys at Catalina Sea Ranch, and it looks like they've branched out. In addition to doing the mussels, they've got lobster, scallops, and several other things now. So it seems like they're doing well. And I'm just wondering if that's your sense of how things are going for them, and about how are things going for the seaweed guys. And I should point out that since I first watched your documentary, I think back in December, I've been eating seaweed every single day.
That's awesome.
Nice. So that's a complicated situation. I think I believe it came under new ownership because, the regulatory costs were very high. My understanding is they went in Chapter 11 bankruptcy. And then, so I don't know, maybe these are new owners who are growing these other things. The seaweed guys got a grant from the Department of Energy of $4.5 million to start their own, grow. And they're, I believe, still working on trying to find, permit for a location to do that. They have branched out though, and they have, rights to harvest kelp in different countries, Argentina, other places. They then take that and turn it into an agricultural product that is used on strawberries or tomatoes or that sort of thing, that decreases the amount of water that is needed to grow all of those plants. Those are the three, sharp young guys, and they're still very much, trying to make it happen. But that would have been kind of an example of a casualty of the regulations, really, that they're the ones you saw on camera are no longer able to work together in that company.
So Andy Kaufman has asked whether there were other subjects that you considered but didn't include in the documentary.
Yeah, we wanted to go to Germany, right?
Yeah, we wanted to do passenger drone.
The drone.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, it's, being filmmakers, it's always a give and take of what I think, especially when I came on board, you guys had laid out, you had maybe upwards of 10 of, at minimum, industries and ways. And then once you're looking at the industry, it's, who's doing this, some sort of sci-fi awesome thing that's actually a business, actually doing that. And so in addition, once you even find that, it's, hey, do you guys even want to be filmed? Do you guys want to have a bunch of people come over and ask you questions and see what you're doing? And rightfully so, a lot of people don't want to have film teams come in for no other reason other than they don't have time for that. They're busy battling regulation or figuring out or being innovators. And so I think really, and Patrick, you can speak the most to this because you were the one who really nailed all of these, getting us to be able to go and speak with these people, is deciding who's doing something and then whether we can actually feasibly go do it? And that's like weighing a lot of different logistics and options.
Right. So this guy's like, I want to do all this stuff, you know, and then we have to go and be like, can we please? It's going to be great. Just let us do it.
Just trust me.
And I think it was, because the film was beautiful. So yeah, well, the one story that we were going to do and we cut late is passenger drones. And it was never really 100% fit because it wasn't really the same level of problem that the other ones did, but it would have been really cool to ride in a passenger drone. So I mean, that technology would work just like Uber, basically. You'd be on your phone, you would say, I want to go to the airport. It would then direct you to go to the nearest building. You'd walk in, take an elevator up, you're on the top of the roof, there's a line of people, and then one lands, you get in it, and it takes you to the location. You know, sometimes there's regulation and other times there's culture. So that company planned on rolling out their product with a human pilot in there who pretty much did nothing. Just because even though it's controlled by 8 propellers remotely, it's AI, it's just delivering you wherever you need to go, but people, they thought, would be afraid to get in to a passenger drone without a person there, even though really it's good. I mean, they do something, I guess, but you know, not much.
So, yeah.
But we didn't get to do that one.
Boy, that would have been really cool. Laurie has asked, and this sort of relates to what we were just discussing, whether or not you consider doing anything in Europe, and what is the difference between the regulatory environment, if you know, between the European Union and the United States?
That probably was also ties in a little bit. I remember us talking about whether we wanted to start, if we went to Germany, we would change up the regulation. It's a whole different.
You would have opened a new can of worms.
Yeah.
Which we were ready to open, but they wouldn't let us film the drone because they had taken all the stuff off of it, so it didn't look awesome because they were putting it through racing trials to test all of the technology, and then they wouldn't let us look at it without it being really pretty. So we didn't get a chance to do that. But I guess so we didn't really cover that, but one of the things that we did learn is, you know, in great part, the United States exports its regulatory system. So I think there are situations in the EU where they're handling things differently, but often this is the case. You know, maybe one of our like not so great exports is, you know, when the United States does something in a regulatory context, it's often other countries just adopt it.
Just a little pushback on that. I mean, for small countries who don't have the resources for a USDA or an FDA, don't you think it's good that they piggyback at least on our FDA when, you know, they're introducing pharmaceuticals to their public?
It very well may be good sometimes to do it. There could be consequences of not doing it, for sure. Yeah, so I mean, I think it makes sense when you have good ideas that have been tested to be exported. I think we tended to have the perspective of often the ideas weren't tested. You know, it's just sort of a command and control, and we're exporting that without ever really seeing if this is the best formulation. So one of our speakers mentioned just the fact that with federalism, if we could have different regulatory regimes in the states competing, then we could kind of see, okay, well, this one works very well and this one sucks. So maybe we should all adopt the one that is going to work very well. When we have a very consolidated system where we don't see that experimentation, then we just see widespread adoption of something that may not be the best with no means to ever know what could have been.
With also accepting and understanding that it's incredibly difficult to come up with these. And so if, you know, not to saying, well, you must be perfect and figure out the perfect system right now, or else no one can innovate, or everyone's going to die of this disease or this whatever. So then it's how can we give and take and allow for that to give some leeway to the government, those officials as well, to say, hey, you have an idea? Let's try it out. This group has it. Maybe we'll see if that works. This group piggybacks off of that in the same way, allowing them to have the innovators as well.
Economic zones almost in some ways test the regulation. We're going to allow this only here, so it's limited. And the negative externalities are limited, but we get to see, what happens, and that's very helpful.
So you guys are all together in Houston right now, and Lauren wants to know, what are your next projects? So you guys are working on a project together, I understand. Are you able to tell us a little bit about it?
Yes, and also I should mention that we're all together and not wearing masks because we've been quarantining together and we're here on shoot.
We work on a lot of.
Yeah, we obey regulations.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think we have a couple projects coming up, which maybe Victoria, do you want to talk about we have a short film coming up in February?
Yeah, we have some a few short films. We have one that we're shooting. These are narrative short films, so scripted. And one of them is set in ancient Rome. That's one we're doing in February. And all three of us are on it. We tend to, especially in the film industry, when you find people that you sync well in, even though we all tend to work as independent artists on our own, you find people that you sync well with, and then you try to stick with that and build like a really strong team that can move out in many different ways. I'll be directing 2 films in the next couple months. That's with this same team that I'm really excited about. These are narrative. I'm doing one of them's an alien script written by this guy, and another one I wrote as well. So we spend our time just really focusing on the idea of honing the craft of filmmaking in terms of creating content. Patrick definitely, I started working in documentary more so when I met Patrick, as I spend most of my time making narrative scripted film. And so whereas Ben has done a lot extensively in both. So I feel like we always just try to focus on how can we create content, whether it's we're here and we're doing it commercial or we're shooting, my narrative short film or my art piece.
I think just 2 projects to mention would be also we had the opportunity where Dr. Atala at Wake Forest University Center for Regenerative Medicine, there's another center there called the Center for the Study of Capitalism, and they sponsored us so we could develop a feature documentary or series specifically looking at medical innovation. And so that's something that we're in development on. Another thing that we're shooting, speaking of Clark Neely, is a short documentary on the issue of civil asset forfeiture. And so that's going to be really exciting because these 2 guys, we all really got to collaborate on that one early on. And so we're going to shoot it kind of like this 1980s or like The Wire, in a way. So all the interviewees are sitting in that, investigative police room, and we're, taking advantage of that classic action movie detective story.
But in a
feel.
documentary space.
Yes, and then, just looking at that issue.
Yeah. And then those, I think in addition to those production, I just, a week ago wrapped a shoot for W Magazine. That was an interview for a photographer by the name of Cobra Snake. He's like well known in the music industry, fashion world.
Yeah, so we're always dragging Ben off to our shoes, and we're like, yeah, that's
No,
a cool music video.
favorite,
what about our documentary?
Yeah.
So Ben, one of the things I mentioned in your bio was your documentary, Honor Flight, Stars and Stripes.
Oh.
Could you just tell the audience a little bit about that and where they can find that? Because I've seen it. My stepdad participated in the Honor Flight, and it's really a special program.
Yeah. I mean, and I have to say, working on that documentary was personally enriching, life-changing, I'd say, just to getting to be a part of it. But yeah, Honor Flight, I believe it's on Netflix still. I think you can pull it right up there. If not, surely you can rent it from Amazon. But it's kind of a meditation piece on what is the value of holding an identity of being a citizen. what is it to have the responsibility to do so? And then that's kind of more of a philosophical, meditation on the thing, but emotionally, the journey that you get to take throughout the doc is, what it is to sort of, as a community, come together. And this was a small town in Wisconsin that comes together and says thank you to these veterans whom, when they came home from the war, I think one of the quotes from the film was, you set your duffel bag down and then you get your suit and you go to work. There's, they didn't get the ticker tape parade or any of that. And then all of a sudden 60 years goes by. So it's kind of this opportunity for these individuals to look back and sort of think about, what does that mean? What does it mean to do that in the first place? And yeah, there's a number of people in that film that, they went to war, and they had a lot of hardships. And then it's like, and then what did you do with your life after? By the way, thanks. I should say too, it was made we shot it in 2011, and even just sort of hearing my say this stuff out loud right now, it makes me realize how much, it's like to make that documentary now would be, I think, much more challenging and kind of less relevant in a way, if that makes sense. Just because it's kind of this feel-good chicken soup for the soul.
We're just about out of time. So I have one last question for all three of you. And I'm actually going to start with Patrick to give Victoria and Ben some time to think about their answer for a change. And that is, it's early 2021. We've just come through a very rough year. We probably have some tough times ahead. I just kind of want you to project ahead and give us your sense of optimism, pessimism, where you think we're going as a country in the coming year or years.
I think one of the themes or one of the approaches to our film that we took with the "they say it can't be done" is, who is they? So you may think, well, it's that evil regulator bad guy. But as it turns out, any one of us can be the they who says it can't be done. We can say, I don't want it in my backyard. I don't like the idea of passenger drones. I don't want other people to get to eat this meat, even if I don't get to eat it. We just sort of frame that in a sense as pessimism. And so, then on the flip side of the pessimism, where you have people arguing and debating, is you have optimism. And we are all optimistic and pessimistic at once. And so it's a decision to it's really a decision that you make. And we felt when we were making the piece, that if we kind of make a decision to do something that has an optimistic feel, that maybe people could take that and look out at the world through a different lens, And so I choose to use the lens of optimism and really not focus on all of the things that we see on the news. And it's almost everything depends on this one thing, and I didn't know they were making that meat. There's a whole bunch of people out there doing things who have no idea what it is. And they're all trying to do something awesome. That's what all of the innovators said. It wasn't, I did this to get rich so I could have a yacht, live on an island with Peter Thiel. No, they all said they wanted to do something awesome. That was their goal. And so we don't see them every day. They're not in the news all the time, but they're there. And I think we're going to see more of them.
Great. Victoria?
Yeah, I would say that oftentimes I think about how these innovators, every time they come up with an obstacle, it's yes and pivot. Rather than focusing on the obstacle, it's how can I pivot to this, which goes in what you were saying, the optimism. And I think that's the underlying thing, that it's okay to get bogged down. It's certainly been so difficult in all this, I know, for everyone. And I feel like the little beacon of hope that really has helped me feel like I can function is, here's this obstacle or something is happening here. I'm going to try to not battle this exactly and say, yes, and I'm going to move and maneuver. And it just opens up your imagination and allows you to feel more like I can actually do something. So instead of feel locked in. So I hope that feeling like an innovator and an entrepreneur, even like in everyday life things, it make it feel more hopeful. And I feel like that's what I read in the future and at minimum the coming year.
That's great. Benjamin, you've got the last word.
Sure. Oh, geez. No pressure. Well, you know, for me, of course, optimism is, you know, it's right there. This film hands it to you in no small amount. Something that sort of came to me throughout principal photography for this was the through line that I kept experiencing being there with these people is that I saw two things. Curiosity, a lot of just asking a question on their own, what did they want to achieve? And then the other thing, which is work ethic. All these people like wanted so badly to answer the question or the need that they saw, that, and they put their shoulder to the wheel. So for me, it's very easy to feel optimistic about it, because the takeaway message for me is stay curious, work hard, and it's all going to be fine.
That's great. Patrick, Victoria, Benjamin, thank you so much for your time tonight. We really appreciate it. It was a great documentary and a lot of fun to watch. Really appreciate that. Everyone at home, thank you so much for joining us. And I hope we'll have you back here on Thursday, January 28th. It's a morning program on Russian efforts to undermine American democracy with Peter Pomerantsev and Svet Derderian. Again, everyone, good night and thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.